Hello.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Hey, we can. How are you, Richard?
Good, good. How you doing? Good. This
Doing well.
afternoon now. Yeah.
Yeah. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. Likewise. Thanks for. I'm just grabbing my office door. Thanks for hopping on the call.
No
Yeah. Nice to meet
no
you guys
problem.
over over Teams.
Yeah. Where are you all located, Richard?
I'm in New York City.
Okay, cool. Nice. And I guess you guys or you have some historical relationship with Kensington, it
Oh
sounded
yeah.
like.
No. You know, they were the broker on a business that I bought from them 5 years
Cool.
ago. Yeah. It's
Nice.
time flies.
Still
Yeah.
op
So
still
yeah. That's right.
operating
Yep.
that business?
Yep. That's right. That's right. I'm still here right now. And then yeah. And then Ken was the broker. Yeah. I've also looked at a few other businesses with him and his son. So yeah, so I've known Ken for 6 years.
Okay. Okay, cool. Nice. Um, well, yeah, glad to be chatting. You are interested in the Funzilla deal, if
Yeah,
I
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah, that's right. And Ken suggested that you're a good person to connect with. So yeah, we'd love to, get your thoughts, kind of walk through my situation, and yeah,
Sure.
see if see. I mean, look, the SBA financing, rules and guidelines keep changing. So I'm a little
Yep.
bit out of the loop in terms of what's the latest and greatest. I've been trying to
Sure.
keep up, but obviously want to get your expert your thoughts on this. So obviously, this is a pretty good sized deal. The asking price is 10.8. I haven't
Yep.
decided yet where I'm going to come in with the bid, but just want to kind of think through with you options for general structure as well as just factor in some unique individual circumstances with me in particular.
Got
I
it.
currently own and operate a business that was acquired with SBA loan, right? So I want to better understand um,
It-
the more recent changes in terms of allowing a borrower to be involved with multiple SBA
Yep.
loans and exceed the 5 million cap.
Is there so there still is an existing SBA loan in
Correct.
place on your Paul
Correct.
Davis? Who's that
Yep.
with?
Correct. With Capital One.
Okay. And how much is outstanding, do you know?
I mean, still a lot of it outstanding, right? Because
Okay.
I would say maybe 4 million is my guess.
It's
Yeah.
front loaded interest. Yeah, so
Yeah,
something like
correct.
that.
Well, yeah, yeah. So it's a 10-year amortization. I also refinanced it. In a couple years after the deal. So it's not
Got
so the
it.
loan has not been around 5 years. The loan's been more like 2 years, I think, because I refinanced it when the interest was low, and got it to
Yeah.
be a pretty attractive,
Okay.
attractive fixed rate.
Yep. Okay. So I'll kind of go through the deal and feel free to
Yeah,
stop me, ask questions, et cetera, as we go here.
yeah,
First off, in terms of SBA,
yeah,
frankly, probably not has changed a lot from when you got it 5 years ago, right? And some of that also is rules got laxed and then they just got pulled back again. So a lot of the rules that you might have been accustomed to 5 years ago is actually, frankly, pretty close to probably where SBA lines today is they kind of rolled back the clock, got back to sort of business as usual pre-pandemic type of rules, I would say. So a lot of what you may already know is probably accurate. Now, that being said, I guess a couple things to kind of chew on. Number one, to your first or one of your points is yes, you can now get SBA loans in different NAICS codes that give you more than $5 million of lending capacity, right? So you have a Paul Davis franchise that does not prohibit you from buying in a different NAICS code and being eligible for a new fresh $5 million of SBA finance, which is great. That was a big change,
yeah.
sort of enabled these investors or very good operators to be able to scale in different areas still using SBA financing, right? So
Right.
that's number one. You are eligible outside of your NAICS code under Paul Davis to acquire and use SBA financing for that.
That's right. Yeah,
Um,
obviously this is very different business than Paul Davis.
correct. Now, the other sort of thing, at least particularly to this deal, just because of size, and I don't know if you got into that with your other previous deal, is we often consider it what's called pari passu debt, right? It is
Yeah, yeah,
conventional
yeah. For this
add-on
one, we'll
debt
for sure do the pari passu.
above
Yeah,
the SBA. Yep, and most lenders conservatively probably tap close to about 2.5. I've seen some that would exceed that, but a lot of times that's a real estate component with a transaction that might change the dynamics a little bit. But
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sort of backing into this deal structure saying, hey, I need to work with 7.5 of max senior debt. Let me
Yeah.
work up the cap structure, otherwise,
That,
right?
that's what I was
So
thinking too. Yeah.
yeah, now I understand the seller might be in for a very small, seller financing note, maybe a 500,000, right? I mean, that kind of
That's right.
puts, depending on the deal size, an equity number probably in the high two range up to 3 million, give or take, right? In terms of what we would be looking at for a down payment, just based on the total
That's right.
sources and uses here. Now, I was sort of manipulating a deal structure that was probably closer to 10 million on a purchase
Yeah.
price range, and I know that might negotiate out, but hey, I wanted to include working capital and all that stuff, right? So at the end of the day, I still might come up with a $10.7 million project, give or take, right? You know, consider that, at least a good, I'm just kind of backing in.
Yeah. I mean, that is basically what I'm thinking as well in terms of.
You know what I mean? But yeah, for $500,000 seller note, you're talking about 2.7 of equity, right? Give or take.
I mean, would lenders view that? What was I? So a few questions, right? A lot of good information
Yes.
there. So first, just one topic. Would lenders view the fact that the seller is only willing to hold $500,000 or no, which is quite small, right, in the grand scheme of this transaction? Would they view that as a red flag?
I don't want to say red flag. It's a little bit subjective with the deal,
Yeah.
right? To me, my big thing, and this is an open mark that we haven't really went through yet, is I have no insight on what year to date looks like, right? And you have a
Yeah.
deal in which, if you've seen the sim, we have some declining trends here, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
my only big question as it relates to sort of deal viability or lender interpretation is, if things are continuing down that path year to date, I sort of agree with you, right? Is that enough skin in the game from the seller to help support or mitigate that risk? That's the one question mark that I frankly have. I mean, otherwise, I think the deal itself is good. We can still get good cash flow out of the deal, even
Yeah.
despite some of the decline, on the amount of debt that we're talking. But
That's right.
that's a little bit of buyer comfort, right? Especially on the deal
Yeah,
size.
exactly.
If you feel that's enough, um, obligation that the seller has to, make sure this transitions well, and and is sort of taking back a little bit of that risk based on the
That's right.
multiple that they still want here. So
That's right. I agree.
yeah,
I agree. It's yeah. So that's I mean, Ken was pretty. I'm sure he said the same thing to other prospective buyers. I mean, Ken was pretty adamant that the sellers are just simply not willing to take more than $500,000 seller note. Um,
yep.
have you? I don't know. Have you seen the tax returns? Like Ken actually sent me their tax returns. I
I
don't know if
have.
that's.
Yeah, I have, and they look clean, which is good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
What I'm saying, like, I get why they're so focused on it. Like, the owners. I mean, it's just a theory. I can't prove it for sure, but from the tax returns, it looks like the owners are pretty into aggressive day trading. So, that's probably why they care so much about getting cash. I mean, their interests are probably. I mean, look, just stereotyping here, but people that are super into aggressive day
sure.
trading are not the kind of people that are going to be grinding their nuts off and and running the day-to-day operations of a
Yep.
kid's gym, right? It's like, so
Yep.
they're
Yep.
not. I mean, they're clearly like not. Their heart's not in it, right? Like, and I
Yep.
went and saw the places. Like, the places are great, you know, but it just looks like a business that's run by absentee owners, right? Like they're
Yep.
owners that are not, so I'm not surprised by the declining trends. Like, it's just kind of what happens when with absentee owners. Like, you build a new fancy gadget, customers come, it's new, it's novel, it's like, oh, it's cool, and then after some time, like, the small things that happens as a result of an absentee ownership business, those small things tend to, like, deteriorate the customer experience, and you start to kind of,
Absolutely.
the novelty wears off, and like, I've seen this 1,000 times,
They
right?
just
So
don't have a finger on the pulse, right?
yeah, exactly. Like, it's not, which is,
Yeah.
it's good and bad. I mean, it means that, like, there is some declining trends, and there is, you are dealing with sellers that haven't been, taking great care of the business, or as good as they should be in recent
Yep.
years. But at the same time, like it's opportunity, right? Someone else
Yep.
who
Yep.
who does have the right mindset, who is the right personality, right? Who's going to be,
For sure.
going in there and kind of grinding gear, shoveling shit, doing all the small things that you need to do to like run a one tight ship. That new owner could go in there and turn things around. So that's kind of how
Yep. Yep.
how I look at the declining trends. Like there's nothing fundamentally wrong with, right? Like it's not a demographic shift away from what they're doing. There's not
No. I mean,
like
maybe you get a little bit of the post-COVID boom, right? Of
yeah,
everybody sort of rushing out
that's some of it
there,
too.
and then seeing some normalization of that. But
Right.
I think it's probably the first more than the latter there, right? In terms of why the decline, right? So
yes. Okay. So back to the financing here. Okay. So what? Help me understand like what exactly? And I'm trying to read about this, and like there's no definitive answer anywhere. I'm seeing conflicting things. What exactly is the rule about? Getting another fresh 5 million. With a different NAICS code. Like, what is it? It's just as long as different NAICS code that's fine. Pretty straightforward.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Per guarantor per NAICS code, right? Is essentially
Got
how
it. Okay.
it's getting defined. Yep.
And how do they like? How different is different enough for the SBA? Is it like the first 3 digits? It's like like the first 2 digits. Like, do they give
Correct.
guidance
I
on
would
that?
say first 3 digits really should be different.
Okay.
But I don't
Got
think
it.
they
Okay.
frankly define.
And there's no issue with ownership, right? Like I saw some other lender says something about like the 51% of the ownership's got to be different, like which sounds kind of contradicting. So do you know if that's
So
even
no. Now the only other change, like I don't even know if this applies here, is SBA did change foreign ownership rules, right? Where
yeah.
previously a 51% or more owned by foreign, or by U.S. citizens was okay. Now it's 100%. You can't have foreign investors in the cap table. But no, in terms of like, if it was, I guess I'll say, if you were trying to buy something in the same NAICS code or similar, right, they might go
Yeah,
down to sort of what you are mentioning is sort of like controlling elements of
I see.
what they consider affiliated entities or not, right? But again, if
Okay,
you're
I see.
buying in a complete different NAICS code, you don't really have to worry about that.
Got it. Okay. And with okay, got it. That's helpful to know because yeah. So to me, like that's like the first question to ask, right? Like if it's if it doesn't work and it's a non-starter, then we got to go look and not
Correct.
which I'd rather not do.
Yep.
And on the pari passu, like yeah, I mean like what I've looked at pari passu notes before for a previous acquisition that ended up not closing because the diligence fell through. But my experience, and I would love to get your advice and guidance on this. My experience is that it's pretty few banks that we even do this because it's kind of like you kind of need some expertise and experience in this. And most lenders, SBA lenders, are kind of risk averse and they want to just do cookie cutter, like $300,000 SBA loans, right? So,
I would say
is there?
Yeah, I would say 5 to 6 at most are proficient pari passu lenders, right, nationwide. So, yeah, you are that is a difference, right, in these types of transactions, size
Yeah,
wise. You are limited to sort of fitting into a smaller credit profile and credit box
yeah,
than you would otherwise have with you're doing a $5 million 7A note.
yeah.
You have the whole breadth of lenders to pick
Correct.
from, right, and choose from.
Who,
Yeah.
who are these lenders that you see most often in doing pari passu deals?
Well, that's a little bit of our secret sauce, but it's
Okay.
the usual suspects, Live Oak,
Yeah.
of the likes,
Yeah.
and a lot of those big guys. So yeah.
Yeah. Like I've dealt with level quite a bit.
Who
I
I
know.
understand is Paul Davis is probably is that who you did your first loan with, or did you do Chase?
No. I talked to them a few times. Like I just uh haven't found the right fit with them. I mean, they are picky, right? Like they're very picky.
Yep.
They're kind of. I mean, they have amazing deal flow. Like that's their
Yep.
advantage, right? Like they're very front and center with with a lot of the whether it's the search fund community or just general like small business M&A. Like they're very they're very good at marketing. So they have great deal flow, which means they're going to be very picky and has to be their way or the highway.
Absolutely. Now there are still some newer players that are different, right, in the pari passu
Yeah.
space that aren't as stringent, right? I mean, Live Oak to me, to your point, is very it's very deal specific. It either fits or
Yeah,
doesn't,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I
So
mean, they had a whole like restoration vertical. I didn't
yep,
talk to them about my deal. But I
yep.
talked to them about a different Paul Davis that I was trying to buy. So okay, and then but just think, I mean, set aside which lenders, right? Like I mean, that's irrelevant for now. Like I just more generally speaking, just sort of looking at this deal. How confident are you that this can be financed, right? In that
I
seven and a half
am.
million pari pursuit.
Yeah, I think I'm very confident, right? I mean, certainly for somebody to take that deal on, I mean, they have to be a different echelon buyer, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But no, I mean, if you one have proven your worth in owning and operating another franchise system very
Yep.
well, right? And there's existing excess cash flow from that entity,
Yep.
good performing. Yeah, I'd say, you're one, if not a small handful, right, that can take on a deal, right, of this size.
Yeah.
So, and there's going to be a lot of other guys, I'm sure, that come in that, either are just sitting on a lot of capital or they have a big investor database that they can pull from, right, and
Yeah.
things like that. But yeah, there is from a just a pure number standpoint, there is absolutely a deal here, and
Okay.
frankly, the $7.5 million cap to me, it's kind of almost good in this scenario, right? We're actually keeping the debt load at a manageable number versus trying to push
Yeah.
up to, 80%, 85, 90% of the total project, right? Because
That's right.
that just, especially when you get in the dollar size where the cost of capital is today, that would make it really, really difficult.
Yeah, I agree. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And for this one, like, I mean, I almost because I
You're
mean, like, this
you're
is
at
a
like
business
a
that
70%, loan to cost, give or
yeah,
take, right, on
yeah,
the
yeah,
debt. I think that's a really
yeah.
good number to be at this
That's
size,
right.
right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I personally don't see a need to go above that, especially for business that I mean, we'll figure out in diligence, but it has had some declines, right? And especially in the New Jersey location, I mean, I went there. I want to see both locations. I can kind of see why it's declining, but I think it's all fixable. And then also, I mean, because they're marketing this as an absentee business, unfortunately from my perspective, it's going to attract a lot of like your family offices, just rich guys with money to burn and don't want to put in the stock market, and even like lower middle market PE firms, right? Like
Yeah,
they
yeah,
it's easy to run, simple business that seems easy to run, but the reality is no business actually easy to run, but on
yeah,
paper it
yeah,
looks like an easy business to run, and they're saying it's absentee, so it's going to attract a lot of the more financial minded buyers as opposed to like operators like me. But
yep.
that's I think my plan is
I'm
put in a
I
bid.
am I am interested there though. However, like do many of those PE guys and family offices really want to come down for what's more of like a franchise model almost, right? Like it kind of
Well, but
is
it's not a
like that.
franchise, right? So
No, it's
they'll actually like
not.
it. It's not a
No,
franchise. And,
no,
and
it
someone
isn't.
might even
But
say, "Oh, if I figure this out, I can be the franchisor," right? Which I mean,
yeah,
I wouldn't,
yeah,
I wouldn't go that route, but but some, I don't know,
yeah,
some financial guy might think that, right?
yeah. I hear you.
So
Yep.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think I would not be. I don't know. I come from PE myself. I
Yeah.
spent my whole career in PE before I decided to just leave and do my own and be
Yep.
more of an entrepreneur. So like I can see it. I can see it, especially in this environment where like cash flow. How kind of businesses that generate like a lot of cash flow and that's somewhat stable and not super cyclical. Like there's not a ton of them, and
Yeah.
there's just so
Yeah.
much money chasing so few deals that I wouldn't be surprised if this draws PE attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Which
but,
then
anyway,
you
but
you
that's
have
it.
to just fight about the multiple number, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's even.
yeah. That's right. I mean, it is on a small side, right?
Yeah.
But you never know. Like some like I'm seeing PE come down market. I mean, I'm sure you see it more than me. PE come down market. More than I would expect it, right? Whereas
Yeah.
6 years ago, 6 years ago when I bought Paul Davis, like the general rule of thumb is anything less than 5 million of EBITDA, like true EBITDA, is not really actionable for PE. I'm definitely seeing PE reaching into the 2-3 million
Yeah.
EBITDA range.
I'd say even sometimes smaller than that, million and a
Yeah,
half,
yeah, that's right.
right? Give or
Yeah,
take, depending on the vertical, right?
that's
It
right.
just depends. So
Okay. And then, okay, one last question from me. So, there's something that I plan to diligence, like once, if we get past sort of the initial, song and dance, uh, really need to understand like just the capital just the capital base, just the capital intensity of this business, right? So I've historically have always looked at service businesses that are not capital intensive, right? Just for me, like
Yep.
as a as an
Yep.
equity, so minded buyer, like I don't like businesses that are heavy capex. Now I don't think this is heavy capex. I think this
I don't think
stuff
so.
is like
I don't. Yeah, not my
yeah,
understanding either. Yeah.
yeah. So I think this is and again I'll have to go and figure out like I mean I asked Ken about like what its depreciation look like and all that like and it doesn't look bad on the on the tax returns, but yeah, I do wonder like how do especially when you're talking about pretty large debt quantums that are 7.5 million like we're kind of tapping out the SBA and the pari pursuit, right? Like how are those lenders going to are they going to look at this and be like, oh actually I want more capex, right? Like I mean they may actually would they actually prefer the business to have more capex, or would they think more like me, where like okay, I just want like high cash flow conversion, like like no
The
low cap.
latter. Yeah, I would say the latter. Yeah, I mean, you start then manipulating sort of ongoing capital needs, right, for that
Yeah,
purpose, right? I mean, then it just gets a little tricky, right? Then
yeah. No, I
you're
agree.
fighting
I
the
agree.
battle if they've deferred maintenance and hey,
That's right.
what sort of refresh is going to have to be taken on a year or 2 years post close,
Yeah,
right? And manipulate sort of excess cash flow, after
that's right.
debt service in those years. So yeah, I think the latter is a cleaner scenario for
That's
these
right. Yeah,
guys.
and frankly, for these businesses, there is some deferred maintenance, right? I mean, it's like so I
Yeah,
want to see in person. Like I want to see sort of how much. I don't think it's a lot, but I think there's some, right? Which you would expect from any business trying to sell. So yeah, so because of that, like that's one more reason to like not lever to the hilt. But
yeah,
we'll want to pay for. Okay, that all makes sense. I think just in the past, like I've talked to lenders that were like thinking the other way, where like, oh well, they want more. They're like, well, how much fixed asset? Well, how much can we? And I always find that when you talk to those guys, like you probably talk to the wrong people because they're not really truly. I mean, everyone says they do cash flow loans, but like
yep, yeah.
some lenders are sort of they say that, but their
They're just
mindset is
so
very much
C and
like
I focused. Yeah, that they
yeah,
can't.
exactly. They're so like, oh, what's airball that cover, right? Like it's
Yeah,
which is a totally different mindset. So okay, that's helpful. All right, so I'm glad to hear that you think that you're pretty confident this will get financed. And where are just again just broad questions, but generally where are things right now in terms of just interest rate on loans like this?
yeah. I mean, I've been sort of telling people that I'd really like to just as a ballpark target, let's go closer to like prime 1.5, right? As a ballpark,
Okay,
get you to not 9 flat today. I mean,
okay,
kind of SBA in general, right?
yeah,
Most deals otherwise are prime 2 to
yeah,
275 over, right? But
that's
size,
right,
scope, complexity of the project, right? I mean, you
yeah.
definitely find with these types of deals, right? Those lenders definitely want to try to keep cost of capital somewhat more competitive, and a lot of these banks may keep some, balance on their own balance sheet instead of selling the paper and things like that. So there's a little
Really?
bit more
Okay.
price flexibility. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I assume most of these guys would just immediately sell off the guaranteed
A
portion.
lot do, but not always.
Oh, okay, interesting.
There is an ongoing trend in the market in which there are various lenders that are holding their own paper.
Got it. Okay, and then in terms of like just having a pari passu, like I've seen some lenders start asking for like covenants and a lot of the things
Light,
that's
light,
certainly
light
not
covenants. Yeah, light
okay.
covenants. I would say. Would be
Like
the
what when you
best
say
way.
like covenants?
Um, DSCR requirements or fixed charge
Okay.
ratios, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Primarily, very, very generally speaking.
Okay. But okay, got it. That's helpful. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I expect as well. I mean, even though the name says pari passu, it really shouldn't have special terms that SBA doesn't have, but somehow the SBA allows it. So um,
Yeah, yeah, it is unique, and most, I mean, certain lenders might change term, slightly. I've seen some pari passu stuff go over 7-year AMs instead of 10, but most lenders
oh
try to
really?
keep it.
Okay.
Yeah, most lenders try to keep it uniform, right? They'll have it
Yeah.
same pricing, same amortization tied to the two notes. Again, they may be required just based on
I mean, it
conventional
should be. Like,
requirements,
yeah, like if I'm
that they
SBA,
put
I
in.
would never allow. If I'm SBA, I
Correct.
would never allow my loan to be
Correct.
10, but yours to be 7. Like
Yep.
then it's not pari. So okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in terms of like your fee, that's pretty standard, right? Like that's gonna be paid by the bank.
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. That all sounds good. So yeah, so I think I'll in terms of process next steps, I think it sounds like they're already starting to get bids. So I'm gonna go put in like an IOI, just a very just simple, straightforward IOI. And if that gains any traction, let's I guess let's get to work. But like, when's the best time you think for us to kind of really pick up the pace and start
So there's a
talking to.
couple different things there. One, I don't. I've talked to Ken on this topic, and I think in some cases, just with the size and scope,
Yeah,
he's wanted me to sort of vet buyers. Now they, I guess, know you a little bit more than maybe other
yeah,
buyers in the pool. I'm guessing, but
which makes
we
sense.
can
Yeah,
always build. We can always build a personal file now and just kind of say, hey, almost that artificial or subjective buyer
right.
pre-qualification process, Richard, right?
That's
That
right.
we could go through now. But yeah,
What does that
typically,
entail?
right?
It's like a PFS and all that.
Well, PFS, yeah, exactly. Yeah, PFS, resume, taxes, right? It's a
Yeah,
really small personal file that we pull together. I can do that, and then I can give Ken the thumbs up, like, hey, Richard's in a good spot versus
yeah,
however long you've seen his personal financial
yeah, yeah,
standing and all that stuff, or proof of
yeah.
funds. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, for me, we can get as involved as early as you need us, right? If you
Okay.
get that IOI and you kind of get in the strike zone, you say, hey, I kind of want to talk to
Yeah,
Fran and
exactly.
chisel away at an LOI a little bit, and we want to sort of strategize. That's why I'm here. And then obviously
Yeah.
LOI is signed and due diligence really starts. Well, then, yeah, let's really put the gas on this thing to build out a bank file and start working to put this in front of multiple lenders with a good data room.
Got it.
So,
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I think my plan is to put an IOI either like today or tomorrow morning. So like because I don't want to fall behind others.
yep,
And hopefully I'll get it. I mean, I've worked with Ken. He's pretty straightforward. So hopefully I'll
yep,
get some feedback and to see if we're in the right area. And if it makes sense, we'll go full speed ahead.
okay, sounds like a plan.
Awesome. All right, that was super helpful, Frank. I really appreciate your time, and yeah, I look forward to
Yeah,
working with you. And also, frankly, like it's good to make the acquaintance. Like even if not this deal, we'll have to come work with you on find something else
for
to,
sure.
to work on together. Like
Yeah,
I'm an aggressive serial acquirer, and I'm ready to move. Right.
good deal.
I've been at Paul Davis 5 years. Things are stable. Made some good cash. So
Time
I'm
for
ready
number
to.
two.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So
Well,
awesome.
yeah,
All right.
pleasure
Thank you, Frank.
chatting, Richard. Yep, we'll
All right.
talk to
Talk
you
soon.
soon. All right.
Have a good one. Bye bye.